What is happening, everybody? Welcome back. These videos are going to be very sporadic. I wish I could do a more consistent thing, but maybe in time or over the winter when we're not working so much. This one's going to be a little different than the previous two because I'm not reviewing a video or something like that, but I guess I am kind of reviewing a thought process. I was just having a random conversation with some cryptocurrency friends of mine, and I guess we all kind of fancy ourselves, philosophical here and there, and maybe even religious. We were talking about, and honestly, this wasn't that long ago, but I already can't even tell you how we got on the subject of free will. But we started talking about free will. I think somebody made a comment about it, and then I commented back, and God was involved, and all the rest of it. Well, if you're on the side that says there is a God, a holy Father, a creator, and this creator is all-knowing, knows the beginning of the story, knows the end of the story, is the Alpha and the Omega, is outside of time, and knows everything that we're going to do before we do it. We've kind of touched on this a little bit in the past, so we're going to get a little more into it right now, I guess. Knows every, how does the Bible say it? Every grain of sand on the beach is counted. Every hair on your head, those sort of things, right? Those who are on that side say that God gave us free will. Now, if God did not give us free will, then worshiping Him would almost be meaningless, right? If we were made to worship Him, if we have no choice in the matter, if that's just the way it is, then that brings no glory to God. It brings Him no happiness, no satisfaction. I don't know. But if we have free will, if we have the ability to reject God, yet we come to Him, that's what gives Him glory. Okay. That falls apart in so many different places. But it's very difficult to speak to people logically and bring up logical questions or logical objections. People who are just have their heads committed to this God paradigm. You can't kind of get through to them. I've had these conversations. I've had these debates. I mean, I really can't even count how many years. It's been a long time. And one thing I've learned is that if someone's mind is set on there being a God, whatever God it is that they choose to believe in and worship, there's no bit of logic whatsoever that's going to change their mind. Because it always goes back to the same kind of, I don't know, excuses or spin or whatever. So, all right. So anyway, as far as the free will thing, here's my argument. My argument is this. Assuming we have a God, an all-knowing God, the Alpha Omega wrote the story from beginning to end, okay? That means everything from the beginning of time to the end of time, or at least time here on Earth, is already written. It's already planned. God planned it. Imagine it were a movie that were filmed from beginning to end. And, we have to go back in time a little bit, but back when movies were on a reel, right, and you had frame by frame. If all of reality were a movie on these reels, on a frame, and you laid it all out on the ground, well, each frame would take you all the way through from the beginning to the end of creation, of us, of whatever. Um, so it already exists. Picture that the whole of eternity from beginning to end laid out on the ground, frame by frame, and God can see it all because God created it. There it is. But we are living it frame by frame. We're going through it, even though it's already been written. Well, if that's the case, and if that's the way it is, if the story is written from beginning to end, can within those frames, can we improvise? Can we change anything? Can we have a different result than what God planned a result to be? Can we make any different choices than what God already knows we're going to make because he wrote the story from beginning to end? Can we do that? My argument, it was a little silly, but kind of got the point across, is that if God knows that, tomorrow or whatever, I'm going to wake up at 3:30 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to get up. I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'm going to flush the toilet, and then I'm going to go get a glass of water and go back to bed. Can I surprise God? Get up at 3:30, go to the bathroom, but I forgot to flush the toilet. And I went to the refrigerator and I had a glass of milk instead of a glass of water. Can I surprise God and do something different than what he already wrote that I would do? If the answer to that is no, how can you possibly argue that I have free will? Because what you're really saying, people are saying two different things. They're saying God wrote the story from beginning to end and knows everything that's going to happen because he wrote it. But then they're saying that we have a choice and we can do whatever we want. How can we do whatever we want if the story has already been written? If I can't fool God, if I can't surprise God, if it's already been written, 3:30, toilet, flush, water, that's the way it has to be. That's not free will. Very often people want to give different definitions to things that have an already established definition, but when it pertains to God, they all of a sudden want to define it differently. So, in other words, if my son asks for the keys to the car, and he's going to go out with some friends for the night, and he'll be home by 1 o'clock, midnight, whatever, and I tell him that's fine. You can go out with your friends. Here's the keys to the car. I want you home by midnight. No drinking, right? I don't care what your friends are doing, but you're driving the car, not a drop of alcohol. Okay, Dad, right? Absolutely. Now, I have faith in my son. I believe that my son will do what I tell my son to do, right? I believe that he will do what I expect him to do and be the person I expect him to be. But could he have a beer? Yeah, he could, right? I might never know about it, but that is free will. He could do something other than what his dad expects that he's going to do. He has that choice. That's free will. If nothing less than that is free will. So again, if I can't have milk instead of the water that God expects me to have, knows I'm going to have, wrote that I'm going to have, then I do not have free will. Now, if you remove God from the equation altogether, now you might have an argument as far as free will and no free will. You might be able to argue that case that we are here by whatever means we are here, okay? Not created, not story written beginning to end. You have to remove all that in order for free will to even come close to meaning anything. If we are here by whatever means, we're living our life day to day, and I can make whatever choices I want to make, right? It's not preordained, it's not pre-written, then maybe you can say I have free will. But the argument comes in now that, well, some people believe we live in a deterministic reality, cause and effect, okay? My upbringing, society, so many things contribute to the person that I become as an adult, as a teenager, or whatever phases in my life. And I can see that, but you can say, all right, so yeah, maybe on big macro kind of things like that, absolutely. Some things are kind of determined, right? Whether I'm going to be a good person, a bad person, how I'm going to think about certain things. Uh, some people say that really everything that you're ever really going to learn as far as your characteristics happen within the first 5 years of life, right? Some psychologists say that, and whether that's true or not, you can make that argument. But then you could say, well, uh, if all those things kind of determine the person I'm going to be, and even on a smaller level, right? So I'm a good person, and I'm a person who, I went into construction, and that's what I'm kind of good at, and whatever, right? But coming up, my whole family was in construction. So it's what I learned, it's what I know how to do, and that might have determined me getting here, right? But now, did I want to be a laborer all my life, or did I want to drive trucks? Do I want to operate machines? Do I want to run my own business? These are all little things that you could say, okay, but those little things you have free will. You can determine that you're on your own, right? But really, whether I determined whether I decided that I wanted to be a laborer or I wanted to be a truck driver or whatever, weren't those decisions also made along the way with what I saw, with what I experienced, with talking to other people in the industry, with whatever, right? And didn't all those experiences lead up to my decision to do this or that? Could it have been another way? Um, how fine do you want to get with it, right? How small, how much reduction do you want to, implement here in order to, before you can say, no, I absolutely had, nothing at all influenced that choice. I can absolutely make that choice, right? Nothing influenced it. Me making this video. Um, I could have made the video. I could have not made the video. But a lot of things went into this. This isn't my first channel. It's not my only channel. There were a lot of things that made me determine that I was going to do these channels. A lot of things that went into me deciding that this was a way that I wanted to be able to express myself. So, did I have a choice about making this video today? And the conversations that I had earlier kind of led to it, right? Deterministic, cause and effect. I'm not saying that there is no such thing as free will. What I'm saying is that it's not quite as simple as everybody might want to believe that it is. Um, I feel like I'm making my own choices, right? I feel like I can do whatever I want to do. If I want to do jumping jacks right now, I can do jumping jacks right now. Or not. I feel like I'm making those choices. But am I really? Do I really have a choice in making those making those decisions? We talked in a previous video about the experiments that are done that say that your brain actually, they can show where, given a choice, they can show where your brain actually made the choice to do something before your body actually did it, before your consciousness or whatever, right? Said to do it. There was already activity in your brain that pointed to that decision being made. Now, I don't know how they read that stuff. I'm not a scientist, but obviously they know how to do it. They've mapped the brain to a certain degree, and they understand the waves, the electricity, and all that stuff, right? And they know what areas of your brain fire off when you make a decision. So it's been shown that a matter of milliseconds, even up to I think a few seconds, I believe it was, your brain has already made decisions for something that you're about to do before you even know that you did it. So it's very, very difficult to argue free will when you start talking about this logical stuff. But bringing it back and putting God back into it and talking about folks who believe that the reason we have free will is because God gave it to us, that makes that argument, the argument that I gave you, it's just really hard to swallow. Being able to understand or comprehend that God wrote the story, but we also can do whatever we want to do. The two things just don't jive. And what happens, and what happened, when I had this conversation with two or three people just a little while ago on X, and what always happens is that when confronted with a logical argument that can really not, you can't get around it, it's just logical. The answer always goes to kind of a God of the gaps kind of thing, but always goes to, well, God is so beyond us that we just don't understand his ways. Trying to understand these things is like trying to, a child trying to understand brain surgery or rocket science or whatever. You cannot understand how these things work. That's always the fallback. That's always the go-to. If you can't explain it, then it's okay. It's God, right? And God is you just can't understand this stuff. But that's the way it is. We don't give that excuse or that definition for anything else in life at all, But we give it to God. Well, I guess I'm going to put it this way. This is how I feel about it. If God is everything, if God is us, if God is my speakers in the back, my guitar, if God is nature, if God is the air that I breathe, if God is everything that I see and feel, all of this is God. Why is God so impossible to understand? Why do we not have a clue about what God is if God is everything? Why don't we understand God's ways if he made us and everything that we are? I think the argument that God did it and we just don't understand it is a cop-out. I think it is a fallback position when you just can't explain something. So instead of actually doing the work and engaging your brain and really trying to figure it out, because if you do that, the conclusion that you might come up to is that this doesn't make sense. This is not logical. And instead of going there and taking that risk of questioning God, you'd rather just say, oh, there's no way we can understand it. That's the fear of God. When people say you should have the fear of God, these people have the fear of God. They're so afraid that if they use any bit of logic whatsoever or question any of these things, that, I don't know, that they'll go to hell, or that I don't know, that they'll suffer something. God won't bless them or have their favor. I can tell you that good things and bad things happen to me all the time. Things that people wish would happen to them happen to me. And things that I would not wish on my worst enemy sometimes have happened to me. Just like anybody else in the world, just like other people who don't necessarily believe that there's a God, and just like people who do believe there's a God. There's no difference. So as far as free will goes, really, you have two choices. Either there is a God who has created everything from beginning to end, has written the story, and you do not have free will. Or you have free will, and there's no God. Let's talk about it. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Let's chat about it. We're not going to solve it, but I would love to hear your opinions. All right, y'all. Talk to you later.